Hello, welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews. It's Gaming Friday. I'm Gary.
And I'm Ian.
And today we are taking a look at the 5 Legacy of Blood games.
Wow.
Starting with Blood Omen, which came out November 1st, 1996 on the PlayStation and eventually on the PC the year after.
Weren't they Legacy of Kain games?
Yes.
Yeah, Legacy of Kain.
The first one was Blood Omen and the series was Legacy of Kain. And it's a series of action-adventure games mainly developed by Crystal Dynamics and published by Eidos Interactive. And of course Eidos are now Square Enix.
Right.
So it's really Square Enix that now owns the franchise, even though they've never actually published a game. Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain was originally conceived and created by Silicon Knights, who went off and made 2 Human, which I was a fan of, but was actually the demise of the company. And so, I find it interesting that the project for this game was called Vampire Project under the title of The Pillars of Nosgoth, way back in 1993.
Yes.
And they chose this over, 2 Human and another game to work in collaboration with Crystal Dynamics. And it was built as a game which adults would want to play.
Right, okay.
It features an unconventional hero and gameplay that demanded reflexes as well as also being quite intelligent.
Yeah, yes.
It's developed as a 2D action-adventure game with role-playing-ish elements, and this game was a huge success. One of its selling points was that for a PlayStation game that boasted more than 50 hours of gameplay.
Wow.
With a wide array of items and weapons and abilities that Kain will come to use throughout the game. So in this game you play as Kain, who at the moment we're basically just being introduced to the world of Nosgoth and some of the evil things that are going on. In the game you play as Kain and you start off as a wealthy nobleman who's in a bar, and the barman's literally tells you just to get out, and you go outside and you get murdered.
Right. Who's just been stabbed though? That woman's just been stabbed.
Well, right now those are the pillars of Nosgoth, and each one of them is subsequently as a boss fight in the game.
Right. Okay.
And each one of them represents one of the major leaders who are like godlike sorcerers.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But they're all corrupt. So Kain spends the entire game, when he's resurrected as a vampire, going on a warpath and killing every one of those sorcerers.
Right. See, I never got that far into this game. I remember playing it back in the day for, I don't know, about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. People were raving about it, about how good this game was.
This was a breakout game.
I was too big into Doom and Duke Nukem at that time. Role-play games back in the day for me were like, if I can't shoot it with a rocket launcher, I don't care.
Yeah.
But I remember doing this. I remember coming out of the bar and fighting these guys, dying.
Exactly. When I first played this, it was just like, oh, wow, this is hard.
Yes.
I died already. But it turns out that you're meant to die.
Yeah,
it's like I hadn't experienced that since Silent Hill. You know, where you wake up from the nightmare after dying, and it's like, oh,
he just stabbed you in the back.
So there you've just seen Kain die, and now he gets resurrected. Now, what I love about the character of Kain is that he struggles with his humanity, and he spends the most of this game, as I said, it's a bit of a revenge story where he's trying to get revenge on the people that killed him, as well as defeating all the corrupt sorcerers of the Pillars of Nosgoth.
Yeah.
He's also trying to find the cure for his vampirism and regain his humanity.
Yeah, because there's 2 endings to this game, isn't there?
Absolutely. At the end of the game, when Kain has defeated all the other pillars, he comes to the realization that he is the last pillar, essentially.
Yeah.
And so he has the option of destroying the pillar, which would end the vampire curse and bring peace to all the land, but it's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Kain has also realized that he's the last vampire of his kind, and so you have the option of not destroying it and then ruling. All of Nosgoth. And as this was a standalone game originally, the choice was yours. But the games that would follow this one would all pick up as if Kain was the one who didn't restore peace and stayed on as a demigod and ruled the world of vampires.
Yeah.
Which is also just great. So this game is influenced a lot from vampire mythology, but also William Shakespeare's plays and sort of the visceral qualities of the Necroscope novels, the intricate plot of the Wheel of Time series of books.
Yeah.
And anti-heroes are pretty unconventional heroes in video games at the time as well. And it was a big gamble to go for a character that is a vampire. Where the player has to face the choice of the fact that you are going to have to drink the blood of innocent people in order to stay alive.
Yeah.
And the character of Kain reflects upon that too, which is why, for a 50-plus hour game, it's really has all those adult themes into it, which for me is what makes this an absolute classic. And I'd hate to think that time would forget this game or this series.
Well, I mean, unless you played these games, you will never forget them. If you weren't born in that era, they've stopped making the series now.
Yes.
If you weren't born in that era, you would never have seen these games.
A lot of these games got re-released and eventually came to like the PlayStation Network store.
Yeah.
A lot of these games were ported to PC.
Yeah.
And it's just a case of hoping that your PC can now run games from the late 90s.
Yeah.
Which it can be a problem, but a lot of fans of the series will keep it... I'm sure they'll keep it resurrected to keep playing on current platforms if there are still people interested in coming back and exploring a world which helps you question what is evil and seeing it from different perspectives and having your morality tested and changed as you progress through. That's just brilliant.
Well, that's it. I mean, the fact that, like I said, back in the 90s, they had a lot of violent games going on. They were trying to push the envelope. And this one allowed you to play as the anti-hero. And you could make the choice at the end if you wanted to save everything or not. But ultimately, no, you wanted to be the bad guy because you were sick and tired of being the good guy.
Yeah.
This one,
this now
I
is
remember.
Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, which came out on August 16th, 1999 on the PlayStation and was ported to the PC and Dreamcast in the year 2000. Now, one of the things I want to bring up is actor Simon Templeman, who voiced Kain in the previous game and will continue to voice Kain in the 4 sequels. So he voiced it in all 5 games.
Yeah.
I also think it's amazing that when I look at him and then go and look at the other characters that he's played, I'm currently replaying Dead Space 3. And he plays the main villain in Dead Space. He also voiced characters in Mass Effect 2, Diablo 3, Darksiders 2, Dragon Age, Star Wars The Old Republic. The voice actor for Kain even appeared on the TV show Star Trek The Next Generation, 24, ER, and Angel. So I'm like, he's got a good, a good presence on screen and as a voice actor. But after hearing his voice for Kain, I'm just like, I want him to narrate everything. I love the fact that every character that you play as, either Raziel or Kain, you get their inner monologues. It's written like a novel.
Yeah.
There's so much complexity to the characters. That's what makes it interesting.
I remember playing this one and it was brilliant, and I wanted to go back and find out who Kain was. Like I said, I didn't play Blood Omen, but this one made me want to go back. This whole beginning sequence was absolutely amazing. He's breaking Raziel because Raziel has overstepped Kain, become something new.
He's evolved into something new.
Yeah, he's evolved something new. And then this whole sequence, this was probably the first time I ever found out that water was acidic to vampires.
Yeah, from a basic vampire mythology, vampires couldn't go across flowing water.
Yeah. But this, when I was so young, just watching, once again, the main character get killed off at the beginning.
Yeah,
and now
to be
they're
resurrected again.
But Raziel wasn't as much the anti-hero. You were the good guy, Kain was the bad guy, and you were going to go round and defeat all the lieutenants. It set itself up
like it was black and white, but then as the story would develop, you realised it was all shades of grey.
Yes.
And that Raziel was perhaps, been manipulated, just as Kain was also manipulated by a character called Mobius, who is pretty much a Time Lord.
Yes.
He has a time machine,
which
the certain characters would utilise as it went on. So this game actually started development in 1997, but there was a huge falling out between Silicon Knights and Crystal Dynamics.
Yeah.
And Crystal Dynamics were like, no, we own the right to Kain. It was our game. You helped us make it. You know, you've got your name on it.
Yeah.
And now you're making a sequel to our game. So there was a lot of legal battles and court fees, and it was settled out of court where Crystal Dynamics retained the rights to make all future games in the series.
Yeah.
And, you know, Silicon Knights were left with 2 human and an early grave.
Yeah.
This game was really, really well received by critics and by fans for continuing the story, having the same voice actors, it, you know, being on the next wave of gameplay.
Yeah, changing it to 3D was another breakthrough as well. I mean,
Definitely.
obviously the first one was 2D isometric top-down kind of view. This one, you know, at the time of Lara Croft and Tomb Raider, this is what you were actually into, jumping around platforms, puzzles. I mean, the combat worked as well. There was the whole extra aspect that you had to injure them.
Well, if you were fighting vampires, you could only finally kill them by impaling them, lighting them on fire, or basically throwing them into sunlight or water. Any other creature, you can basically just do a sort of finishing animation once they're dazed.
Yeah, and gain their souls
you basically
back.
absorb their souls, And
the whole time shift, the whole shifting into the phase world.
Right.
That was really good as well.
Yeah, you shift into the spectral world.
Yeah, because you get to a puzzle and be like, how the hell am I supposed to get past this? And then realise, actually, if I do that, then I can shift through there and I come out the other side. And
it also makes water insubstantial.
Yes.
And so, basically, now, my biggest criticism for this game is that all I remember it mostly for is block puzzles.
Everything was a block.
Level was a block puzzle. It was a case of pull this block here, shift to the spectral realm, then go and pull this switch, and then you've got 5 seconds to go over and turn this block around and then push it in this space. Then go back to the spectral world and push this block to jump onto that block before... And it was so repetitive. Yeah. So frustrating.
But at the time, you didn't care about that because you'd already done that like a million times in Lara Croft. The way that the games have been designed, that they were the blocks, everything had to fit into the blocks.
I found that the puzzles in Tomb Raider were at least complicated and
Tomb
varied.
Raider was a hell of a lot puzzle-based game. But this, you know, you're playing as a vampire. This was cool. You know, on top of that, it brought in the kind of Metroid, Zelda aspect of games, which would be defeat a boss, get his power, move on to the next area. Can't get past that area.
Well, that's exactly how this game was designed, where each level boss would be one of Raziel's brothers, one of the other lieutenants of Kain, and every time he defeated one, he would gain some of their powers.
Yes, yeah.
And so that
like he'd be able to swim in the water then, and I don't know if he had extra strength or whatnot.
Most of the enemies that you fight in the game as well are either humans or the spectral creatures, and most commonly other vampires.
Yeah.
Human enemies include peasants, vampire hunters, and vampire worshippers.
You just killed everything along the way just to feed.
Yeah,
you know,
everything.
Keep yourself alive so you could get to Kain.
And the story is basically 1,500 years after the events of Blood Omen.
Yes.
So the entire world is at this point overrun with vampires, and Kain has, well, basically unlimited power.
Something like that. He's just a god at this point. But I remember the ending kind of pissed me off.
It's a cliffhanger ending.
Yeah,
big time.
It was a cliffhanger ending,
and that was one of its big criticisms.
I had to wait for the next game, and it was ages until I got the next game. But once I did this, there was nothing more to go back to.
No, there's very little replayability in the game.
Yeah,
it's because there's no multiple choice ending.
There's no
it's
secrets.
A case of you catch up with Kain, you beat up on Kain for a little bit, Kain beats you back, and he opens up a time portal and disappears through it, and Raziel basically has to follow.
Yeah.
That brings us on to Soul Reaver 2.
Yes.
Which was released on October 31st, 2001, also developed by Crystal Dynamics and published by Eidos. It was originally developed as a PlayStation and Dreamcast project,
right?
But the PlayStation 2 had just come out, and so what they were working on was then reworked into a PlayStation 2 game, and it also went to PC. And what you're seeing here is the ending, essentially, to Soul Reaver being recapped to you at the beginning of the second one.
Right.
Now,
is this the one where you get to play as Raziel and Kain, or is it just Raziel on his own?
in this one, you just play as Raziel again.
Right, yeah.
And they wanted to do away with the traditional complete a level, fight a boss, gain a power, go on to the next level. They wanted to scrap that.
Yeah.
And so the level designers constructed a sort of a generalized puzzle and object interaction system, helping to prevent sort of the undesired reemergence of Soul Reaver's block puzzles.
yeah.
Which, they wanted this game to feel more cinematic, more story focused of an experience than the last game, which they felt was a little bit patchy at best.
Yeah.
Because, it did away with the open world sort of nature of Blood Omen.
Yeah.
Now, I also think it's interesting that this game entered production after Blood Omen 2. But this game came out 6 months before Blood Omen 2.
And Blood Omen 2 is the one where you get to play as...
just Kain.
Right, okay.
Okay, so 2 games in the Legacy of Kain series were in production simultaneously. And the writers for this game were writing it, and then they realised that what they were writing completely contradicts what the other team that were developing Blood Omen 2 with complete creative autonomy.
Right.
And so then this game had to be reworked yet again to coincide with what they were doing with the Blood Omen 2 story. So not only did this game change the console that it was originally being worked on, it had a smaller development time than its upcoming sequel, and it had to deal with plot inconsistencies and also dealing with time travel. So, and they also entered into this game with no master plan as to how they were going to continue the franchise. They knew what they were doing with Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, but had no idea where to take it.
Yeah, and I remember that because I remember at the end of Soul Reaver, at the end of Raziel's storyline on the PlayStation 1, it was left on a cliffhanger, but everyone was like, I want to play as Kain. I want to be Kain, because they'd all played Blood Omen, and Kain was like the big character.
Well, he's also the major antagonist in Soul Reaver,
yeah,
so...
I wouldn't come back to the franchise until I got hold of one that came out on the Xbox. And you were playing as Raziel, but jumping into Kain. And
this would be Legacy of Kain Defiance.
And even then, like I said, my interest in the actual series after Soul Reaver waned. I like I said, this one came out, and I must have ignored it. That's the thing. I mean, was there any great moments in the game that made you go, "Whoa, we should play this one"?
This whole game, like I said, it was designed to be more cinematic.
Yeah.
They expanded the world of Nosgoth, and they forced the player back into the mythology of Blood Omen, and it builds on the similar themes of fatalism, ethical dilemma, and your morality choices.
Okay, yeah.
And it's about Raziel, who, because he met the Lord of Time, Mobius, and he also meets the Elder Gods, and they tell him that the wheel of fate has sort of broken, because now that the world is overrun with vampires, no souls are going into the afterlife to keep the wheel of fate going, to spawn out new souls.
Yeah.
So Raziel was in turn created to bring an end to the vampire apocalypse, so that the wheels of fate would turn normally again in predestination.
Okay.
But Raziel has free will. Kain is on a predetermined path, written in the sands of time, essentially, on this path. But Raziel is exempt from it. And so Kain, in this game, and in the last one, is sort of manipulating Raziel's free will to do the things that would lead to Kain hoping that Raziel would make the choice that he didn't at the end of Blood Omen, and that is to have vampires in the world and restore humanity and the balance to the world.
Wow, that's mind-blowing.
And now, in order for all of this to happen,
yeah,
Raziel needs to travel through time to see all of the conspiracies and all of the plot points that led through Blood Omen and Soul Reaver to get to the point where Raziel has a better understanding, and then having his free will could make the ultimate choice come the end of it.
Right. But would you even care at that point? You're wanting to go around and kick ass, and all of a sudden you're being forced to make this choice.
I like the fact that it turns, it gives Kain a little bit more character, and he's not in Resil's eyes, he's not the main villain anymore. Mobius and the Elder Gods are the ones that screwed everything up in the first place, and throughout time have continued to manipulate things, but every time they overcome that enemy and change the timeline, another enemy, which was previously defeated, has resurfaced into power again.
Right. I suppose that the basis of this series is it's just Kain. Kain is just a brilliant based character, and okay, yes, the games are all over the place and chopped and changed and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't matter. It's all about Kain.
Well, yeah, this brings us on now to Blood Omen 2, which was released in March 2002 on the PlayStation 2 and on the Xbox and on the GameCube, and was of course developed by Crystal Dynamics and published by Eidos.
Yeah.
And this was, like I said, the secondary team that worked on this game, and they had started work on it in 1999, and they intended to create a more action-focused entry into the Soul Reaver games.
Okay.
Which was previous emphasis was on the puzzle solving. This one is a bit more hack and slash. But this game, again, massive commercial success. It's the first game in the series since Blood Omen, because it's Blood Omen 2, to have Kain as the main protagonist. And like I said, this game was developed at the same time as Soul Reaver 2, and is essentially... This story now takes place after the events of Legacy of Kain Defiance, which is the sequel to this one.
Sequel to this one, yeah. But
timeline-wise, it takes place after this one. But
and before Resil.
No. Because Resil, who sacrificed himself at the end of Soul Reaver 2, because he was caught in a time paradox otherwise, he ends up possessing Mobius's corpse. Kain thinks it's Mobius and stabs him with the Soul Reaver.
Yeah.
Raziel comes back and says, "This was my choice, Kain. You are my master. I need to die. The Soul Reaver blade, which is there, now needs my soul in it.
Okay.
To make the blade what it should be.
Right.
And so now Kain is wielding the Soul Reaver, but has now been defeated by the Seraph Lord, who's risen up.
Right. Mind blown.
It is, and now I can only say that this is why I think that the Soul Reaver or Legacy of Kain series games fell off the cart, was because the story was so convoluted that anybody coming into the franchise would not have a clue what's going on. I've played through all of these games and I'm trying to remember what actually happens and what did happen, because the games, they don't contradict themselves, but they travel through time so much.
Yeah.
Like 500 years before Blood Omen, 1,500 years after Blood Omen.
Yeah.
And then you're also jumping in, because this game is essentially an alternate timeline now. Because the events were altered
by
Raziel in the second game through his free will, which I think is also quite an amazing sort of theme to explore within a character.
But then on top of that, I mean, the difficulty is with most games you need a hero and a villain. In the first game, you had Kain as the anti-hero, which was kind of cool. You then take control of Raziel, and he's the good guy, Kain's the bad guy. Then on all these games that are following after, you're like, what's my moral standing? I'm playing as Kain now, so I'm happy to be a complete murderer and psychopath and going around destroying everybody? Or am I going to gain my humanity at the end and change something? No, you're just going to go back in time and change it all.
Yeah. It's
and that's my thing. Like I said, I stopped after Soul Reaver. I remember seeing these different games come out. I mean, that guy there's just ignoring this great big vampire with a spiked mace next to his belt. Why?
Yeah. Nothing out of the ordinary here.
Yeah, it's just normal vampire.
Well, I mean, this is technically the tutorial stage.
Yeah.
Where it's just teaching me how to kill enemies, absorb the blood, find treasure chests to open them up to increase Kain's powers, because he's not 100% anymore. He's taken a 200-year nap after being slain, and now he needs to recover and get his powers back.
It's always a cop-out
It's always a cop-out, you know. In every game, it's a case of, go back and get your powers again.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what powers do I get this time? And it was a case with both Soul Reaver 2 and this game that they didn't really get to complete and finish the game that they wanted.
Okay.
And a lot of assets were just unused. Certain levels, certain bosses, certain pieces of dialogue just couldn't be completed in time.
Yeah.
And so I've never felt like every one of the sequels is felt almost incomplete when you look at Blood Omen and everything that game set out to achieve. It did.
Yeah.
It's only unfortunate that it looks really dated now, and it's the sort of 2D perspective, which I think some gamers would quite appreciate that sort of comeback. You know, the retro style gaming has had a big resurgence lately.
I mean, I'd play it for classic retro value.
For the nostalgia value of it.
But anybody who's obviously watching present day gaming, they'd be like, nah, I can't. It's not. Yeah. It's not HD. It's not 4K. It's not.
Well, this game was also mainly criticised for its steampunk and sci-fi themes, which really clashed with the aesthetic look of the original games.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit upsetting, and and the main protagonist of Kain, he was presented in this game as more of a shallow tyrant with no real hint at his past personality and his struggle with his humanity.
Yes.
Like I said, it felt very rushed, so fans were a little bit more critical of the game than actual critics.
But then we get to Defiance.
We now get to Legacy of Kain Defiance, which was released on November the 11th, 2003 on the PlayStation 2, Xbox and PC, and is more, again, back to the action-adventure style gameplay that Crystal Dynamics has brought to the series.
Yeah, I remember playing this one.
It received high reviews on its release.
Yeah, but it wasn't anything brilliant. As I said, by the time I got to this on the Xbox, Halo was out. You had all these other great games that were breaking new on the Xbox.
I feel that it's a shame that those other games eclipsed this one. Because this is a great standalone game in the franchise that does conclude a lot of the storylines, and it has a kind of uplifting ending, promising that there is hope for the future of Nosgoth after Raziel's sacrifice and after what Kain and Raziel both go through, sort of brothers in arms, through this game.
Yeah.
And this is the only game in the series where you do get to play as both the heroes.
You get to play as both of them, but you were still... I was playing as Kain, and much like Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, I was playing as Kain and then going back to Raziel, and I'm like, I don't want to play as Raziel, I want to play as Kain. Oh, but it's Raziel's story, and I'm like, who the fuck cares? I'm being told by everybody and their mother that it's...
It depends when you joined the franchise. Like, you joined for Raziel. I was there with the first Kain game, so for me the series is about Kain. And for a lot of other fans, it was about Raziel.
Yeah.
Because that was the first games that they played.
Yeah. I mean, I would say mainly the series is about Kain. And Raziel is a very good side character. Raziel is better than Raiden, I suppose. And Kain is Snake. And you just want to play as him. Yes, he's the bad guy. But sometimes it's good to be the bad guy, but when you have to sit through 3 other fucking games, after a while you're like, ugh.
Yeah, but there's the other criticism that came to this game is the fact that Raziel and Kain, in their own games respectively, had unique abilities to them.
Yeah.
And in this one, they both felt like you were playing the same character.
Yes, that was something I was going to say.
I hate these jumping segments.
I missed it.
This is one of the things that I hate about this game is the camera. Now, in the other games, the camera you had control of. And in this one, you have some control of, but it snaps back to its default view.
Yeah.
And the fixed camera angle positions, when it comes to platforming and jumping, was just freaking nightmare and an absolute frustrating mess.
And that's the thing of trying to advertise these games to people who haven't played it. It's really difficult when you have such great camera work nowadays. When you're forced into this, if the camera's in a fixed position, I can live with that.
Yeah.
But if it gives you that loose little what are you doing, Gary? Oh my god, just climb up, press it up. When the camera says, you can move me around, and you realise you can move it like 2 centimeters to the left and 2 centimeters to the right.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not freedom.
No, especially when it just rubber bands backwards. It's just frustrating.
And I remember in this one, a lot of the time you had 2-way puzzles that you had to do.
Yeah, again,
You know,
it
Kain,
has.
you do a part with Kain, and that would then you'd have to use Rizio at another point. And
Yeah.
then just
There was a
get
bit of
towards the end.
backtracking. Like I said, the biggest complaint was that the both characters felt too much the same when
Yeah.
you played them.
Yeah.
There was, you had to backtrack quite a bit, and there's no map. There's no clear objective to tell you what you needed to do. And, but I will still praise this game and the entire series for its voice acting, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
The animations, the characters and level design, all just icing on the top with great atmosphere. Yes, the gameplay does get very repetitive, but the story and the climax for me was satisfying, and I hold this game series in really high regard. And if you've never played any of the games, and if you want a nostalgic trip and play something which I think needs to be resurrected, the world needs some good vampire games, and the Legacy of Kain series was great. It got a bit too convoluted. Maybe reboot the franchise, HD remake them, but god damn it, get those voice actors back, because they really brought that script to life. I highly recommend you play any one of the games in the series. You're going to enjoy the dark literature, the vampiric atmosphere. Absolutely. Check out some of these games.
I definitely recommend just the first one. I'd say Blood Omen.
Not Soul Reaver?
I would say go back and play Blood Omen, and if, unlike me, if you can get through the game's combat and all that kind of stuff and complete it, you'll enjoy it. And that will open up the way for Soul Reaver, and maybe play Soul Reaver, and if you enjoy that, jump to Defiance and just knock Defiance out just to finish the story.
Or
the whole thing, like you said, is a bit convoluted. Time travel. If you're a fan of that and you followed it all of your life, then yeah, you're really, really going to love it. But any newer person, camera angle, blocky puzzles, bad combat, over the top storyline might be a little bit too much for them.
Maybe. Well, that's it from us here this Friday on Off the Shelf Reviews. I want to say thanks for watching. We're back next Friday looking at another video game. Of course, film reviews on Thursdays. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Patreon. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time.
Peace.